Show number 78 of CXO-Talk. We're always talking about transformation and innovation, and a key component of that is the business model. I'm Michael Krigsman. I'm here with my, how do I say it? Glorious co-host Vala Afshar. Mr. Afshar, how are you?
Michael,
I don't think we should do fist bumps or anything. There's like no fist bump. Nobody can see it, so it's become redundant if no one can see it.
Thanks for leaving me hanging. That's a great way to start the show.
That was a half fist bump. So Vala, today is the business model day.
Today's a business model day, and I think representing all executives who are trying to make sense of disruption and innovation velocity and how to stay relevant, I think we have a wonderful opportunity to learn from truly a global expert.
Yes, we're here with Alex Osterwalder, who is an entrepreneur and an author, and really, I think, the business model, I don't know, can I say, the business model king of the world, and mean it.
Business models king of the world.
And mean it seriously. I have been an admirer of yours,
Absolutely,
and reader of your books, and practitioner of your methods for years. So, Alex Osterwalder, it's really our pleasure to welcome you to CXO-Talk.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Alex, we'd like for you to share a little bit about your background with our audience, but I wanted to share your bio on Twitter, which is Alex Osterwalder, and it won't rest until senior executives and entrepreneurs operate like surgeons. I love that. So as you describe your background, could you talk a little bit about how you plan to help us operate like surgeons?
Yeah, so I'm pretty passionate about business tools. When I was at business school, I did a PhD on the topic of business models, but I really wanted to create business tools that are practical. And some of the tools that we've done with our team and with my co-author Yves Pigneur, we really see the difference that it makes when people use them. And I think in business, we're very good at the operational stuff, accounting, finance, but when it comes to more strategic issues, strategy and innovation, I think we can do better. We can use tools more. And the analogy I like to make, connecting back to the way you introduced me, is think of yourself having to go through heart surgery. Pretty dramatic, right? You have to go through heart surgery. You're in the operating theater, and then comes your surgeon with one tool in his or her hands. A Swiss Army knife. How do you feel? Probably not very good, right? And I think today in strategy and innovation, sometimes we're almost in that kind of space. We did a little research and survey about what kind of business tools executives use, and one of the top tools that came out was SWOT. Now, I have nothing against SWOT, but I think we can do better. And if you look at how surgeons operate, well, they have several tools to perform a heart surgery, and they're trained for 13 years to do that. So I think strategy innovation is going to become a profession, just like accounting or finance and being CFO. I think we're going to get better at these kind of things, designing business models, designing value propositions. In particular, because we have to, because business models expire like a yogurt in the fridge, right? So we're under pressure to actually reinvent ourselves.
You wrote a book called The Business Model Generation, and you started a company called Strategizer on the basis of that book. So tell us about the book and tell us what is a business model. Let's just start from the basis. What's a business model?
So at the heart of that book is a tool called the Business Model Canvas. And the Business Model Canvas allows you to describe your business model. It has 9 building blocks. You could call it a template if you want, but it just allows you to visualize your business model. So you might think, oh, well, that's not, nothing spectacular, and everybody knows their business model, and anybody in business can describe their business model. But if you ask people, what is a business model? You'll get very different answers from very different people because everybody understands something else under the business model. So what we did with the Business Model Canvas, the heart of this last book, Business Model Generation, is create a shared language. So companies like MasterCard now use the Business Model Canvas as a way to discuss how they're creating value for their company and for their customers. So we need these kind of shared languages to discuss terms that have been fuzzy to date, like business models, like value propositions. I'll add some more that we didn't work on, like organizational culture. They're very fuzzy things. I think we can get more concrete, we can create a shared language, and we can better describe it. So back to the business model. Business model canvas consists of 9 building blocks. The value proposition, what are you offering your customers? The target customers, who are you targeting with that value proposition? How are you reaching them? With which channels are you reaching them? Once you're doing business with them, what kind of relationship are you establishing with them? Is it transactional? Is it long-term? Is it personal? And then, how are you earning money in your business? Is it through subscriptions? Is it through sales? So those kind of things. That's what we call the front stage. Everything is visible to your customers. Then you have the backstage. Say, what do you need to create value for your customers and to reach your customers? What are the key resources? What kind of assets do you need? Do you need a brand? Do you need factories? What are the key things that you need to have to create and deliver value? And then the activities. What do you need to excel at? Are you a company that needs to be really good at R&D? Are you a company that needs to be really good at marketing? So not just all the activities that you do, but the key things in your business model that support your business model. And then the key partners. Who are you going to work with to leverage your business model? And if you look at those 3 components that I call backstage, if you want, you can very quickly sketch out your costs. And then you have a very beautiful big picture, the blueprint of your strategy, if you want, on one piece of paper, on one sheet, on one poster, of how you're earning money and where you're spending the money. Basically, the story of how you're creating, delivering, and capturing value. And the powerful thing is that today we don't focus on that big picture enough. We're very focused on products, and services, but we don't always understand the business model really well. And in particular, we don't always think of, hey, our business model is expiring. What am I going to build next? Right? Sure. In particular, successful companies, they don't think of the next business model.
You're a best-selling author, and your book is very visual. You use visuals to convey concepts. There's a beautiful design. It's like it was designed in Cupertino, and there's an emotional element to it, and so it looks like you changed the product and perhaps even introduced a new business model in terms of introducing the book. Can you talk a little bit about that mindset and that process in terms of producing a book that's widely considered the standard book in terms of business models?
Yeah, so Business Model Generation sold 1 million copies, which in the book world is actually quite a bit. But what's more exciting is that people use the Business Model Canvas from the book. And I think the reason why this book was successful is because it differentiates from others. So we did pay a lot of attention to visuals. We made the book visual, not just to make it different, but because when you talk about business models, strategy, and change, visualizations help you simplify complex things. And think of it this way, and this is why we use visuals in our book. Think back to the last business meeting you had. Right? It's a lot of smart people sitting around the table and a lot of talking. But we sometimes kind of get lost because we can't grasp the conversation. If you'd use a visual tool to capture, okay, we're talking about the business model now. Who are the customer segments? And you put them there, and you can come back to it. Now we're going to move over here. The value proposition. We talked about these 5 elements, and we visualize it. You have something tangible. So what we like to say is we need to get out of the world of blah, blah, blah into the world of more strategic conversations where we manipulate, just like somebody building a product would, something more concrete. The business model, the value propositions, maybe even organizational culture. So we did that. We translated that in the book. That's why it's a visual book, because we really believe that visual thinking is crucial. And the tragic thing is, the higher you go up in a company, the less you'll find whiteboards or flip charts in the boardrooms, right? Because we're not used to that yet. But I do think it's changing. So the world is complex. That's how you simplify it. So we we made it a landscape book with visuals because that's, I think, how we're going to be working in business around strategic issues. We're going to make things tangible. So we differentiated the product, and you know, every year there are 11,000 business books coming out. 11,000. That's a pretty competitive field, right? On top of 250,000 business books that already exist. How are you going to stand out? So by doing that, we did, you know, kind of differentiate from others, in addition to having a very practical business tool in the book, which is also different from a lot of the business books today, which have great content, but they don't give you as a practitioner a tool. If I read a business book, I don't want to be intellectually entertained. I'd love to have the time to do that, but what I really want is a tool that I can apply on Monday morning. So that's what we try to do in the whole format. Okay. Then, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the business model canvas is very, very simple, and yet despite its simplicity, it's the foundation of courses. Steve Blank, who I guess is the preeminent professor of entrepreneurial studies at Stanford, has a course based around it. So it's deceptively simple, yet the implications are very deep. So what suggestions do you have for how to take best advantage of this simple idea?
So there are a lot of ways. So because it's a pretty, you know, business models is a pretty broad topic. It can go from better managing your existing business model or your business models if you're in a large company, all the way to reinventing new business models. So it really depends on the objective. But number one, just in the next business meeting you have, when you talk about your business model or your strategy, you know, get people around a business model canvas to sketch it out, to make it tangible. And you'll see something pretty astonishing, that you think everybody knows the business model. It's not the case. I'll give you an example. Toyota Financial Services wanted to, you know, work on a couple of innovation projects to create new growth. Okay, so they used the business model canvas with their top 50 executives. They came together and they sketched out the existing business model. Now, surprisingly, you know, it didn't go that fast that they would, you know, have their business model, their existing business model, on a piece of paper in 5 minutes. No, they had to agree. Well, who are we really creating value for? Who are our target customers? What is the value proposition to those target customers? So even sketching out the existing business model can have advantages because you'll make everything crystal clear. That's number one. But then if you're in a large company, you want to start creating a playground to think about the business models of tomorrow. Because business models expire faster than ever before, and some companies paid the price. I mean, take Eastman Kodak, take Nokia. How fast did their business models expire? If you take Nokia, they were at the top of the world just a decade ago, and then their business model expired because they couldn't reinvent themselves while they were existing. So you want to use these tools like the business model canvas to better execute your existing business, and at the same time create a playground to reinvent yourself. So it's not either or, it's and. Right? And that's the hard thing. Most companies are really good at execution, but they execute their existing business model so well that they, I'll call it, forget reinventing themselves, which is, you know, a bit unfair to put it that extreme way, but they don't invest what they really, you know, as much as they really should to create tomorrow. There are very few companies that do that. So unfortunately, you know, the example that comes up again and again and again is Amazon. Amazon is one of the very few continuous business model innovators. I mean, how amazing is it that a company that's very successful in e-commerce is becoming one of the most successful companies in the cloud space, you know, scaring IBM, scaring HP. That is just because they have the mindset of, we're executing our business model, we're excellent at that, but at the same time, we're building new businesses. Very few companies can do that at the same time. Very few. That's where you want to use these tools like the business model canvas.
I believe it was Steve Blank who said no business plan ever survived first contact with a customer. And in the spirit of that, we have a question from Twitter from David Moore. And David asks, Alex, what do you see as the most common mistake that leaders make with business models?
So I'll connect that question back to what I was just talking about, that in existing companies, you want to have great execution of the existing business model, but you want to create new business models. Now here is where a lot of people go wrong, and that connects back to the business plan idea, that a lot of the successful companies today are applying the logic from their execution machine to the search of new business models, and that's where business plans come in. So to execute an existing business model, a business plan is a perfect document because you can predict what's going to happen. You know your market, you know kind of the growth. Failure is not an option, okay? You don't want to change that. Anybody who says we want to become the innovative company, we want to innovate, you know, everybody needs to be an innovator, that's nonsense. You need executors. They execute the existing business model. There's no space for failure. But here's where the business plan makes no sense, is on the other side, where you're creating a space to search for the business models of tomorrow. And when Steve Blank says, you know, no business plan will survive contact with customer, what he means is you don't know what's going to work. So writing a business plan, refining your ideas, you know, sketching out the numbers and predicting what's going to happen is a waste of time because it's never going to happen that way. Never. Okay? There is no entrepreneur or no big business that can say, we executed our business plan. Everything happened like we described it. It's a waste of time. So anybody who has spent 2 weeks or 3 weeks on a business plan for a new idea has wasted his or her time. Business plans don't work for new ideas.
I wonder how many of the 11,000 books would state what Alex just stated, that business plans are a waste of time. That's incredibly bold.
That's why his books are so influential.
That's right.
And so useful because the concept is so similar.
Right.
You know, Steve Blank also, we keep coming back to
Yeah.
Steve. You can tell we're admirers of his as well. So he has said the answers cannot be found within our four walls. What does that mean, and how does that connect to business model?
So I like the fact that you're connecting it with Steve Blank's work because we get along extremely well, and we both kind of try to cross-promote our ideas because the business model canvas, if you want, you could see it as the business plan of the 21st century. So instead of writing 50 pages, you now have it on one page if you just, you know, think very hard of your canvas. So here's how it connects back to Steve Blank's customer development. And to the whole idea of customer research and so on. You want to be able to sketch out a business model canvas and throw it away a minute later because you're exploring. And the moment you accept that you don't know what's going to work, you can let go. So sketch out your idea very quickly and then test it immediately. So I'll give you, an example. You're in a meeting room, in a large company or in a startup, can be the same thing. You have an idea, you sketch out your idea with these tools, business model canvas, value proposition canvas. Rather than now developing that for a week, what you want to do is the next day test that idea in the market. And what I mean with that is not building a prototype. No, you start talking to customers, get out of the building, as Steve Blank would say, and you start figuring out, are the jobs, pains, and gains that I thought my customers have, are they really there? And what you'll see is you're going to have to throw away your business model canvas, so your business plan on one page, and start over. And that's the process in the space of search. You're going to prototype your idea even before you start prototyping a product. And while you get out of the building and talk to customers and make experiments, you're going to learn. So here's the way we draw it. We say, when you start out with an idea, uncertainty is at its maximum. Okay? You have no clue if it's going to work. That's just the honest reality, right? So when you have large uncertainty, you do cheap tests. You talk to customers, very cheap. You just get out of the building, talk to 10, 20, 30 potential customers. You'll learn from that. You'll reduce uncertainty. Okay? The more you learn, the more you can invest into more tests. So when you have a certain amount of knowledge, then you can start building a prototype. The prototype will give you more knowledge, but you need to understand that you start with cheap tests, you learn, you reduce uncertainty, and you increase the spending on your experiments until you reach a level where, okay, now I have enough evidence. So Steve Blank now calls it evidence-based entrepreneurship. It's the same thing for large companies. The more you know, the more you can invest. And at one point you'll say, I have enough evidence now from the market that I can turn into execution mode. And that's the moment where you can write a business plan because you have enough evidence gathered to switch from the search mode, searching for value propositions that customers want and business models that work, into execution mode where you're going to start building it. The problem today in most large companies is they remunerate or even incentivize people to give you a business plan rather than to experiment. And why don't people experiment in most companies? Because they fear failure. Okay? You don't want to admit failure. Writing a beautiful business plan makes it look like your idea is going to work. Okay? But saying, I talked to 10 customers and they all said our ideas suck, nobody wants to do that in a large company because it can potentially mean at the end of your career, you're gone. But that's what you need to do to provide the evidence, this doesn't work, this works. See what I mean? So you actually prototype your business model canvas, you throw it away, you come up with a new one until you have evidence to say, this is going to work.
Evidence, so it's basically when you finally move forward, it's based on having a plan and having actual evidence from the customers. So it's data-based, evidence-based.
Definitely. So I'll give you an example, very silly one. So in the medtech field, let's say you're creating a new company in the medtech space, right? And you can't build a prototype because that's already very expensive. Well, here's a very simple test or experiment you can do. You get some meetings, you talk to your potential customers, you figure out, you kind of see, where it's going, and then you give them the solution you have in mind, the value proposition you have in mind, and then you give them a link, a simple link that you can track, okay? You go back to your office. If that potential customer didn't click on that link to get more information, you just told them there's more information here about what we're intending to do. If that potential customer didn't click on that link, which you can now measure in the anonymous space, they don't know you're tracking it. They don't know they're checking if you're clicking. If they don't click, what does it mean? It means that they either don't care at all, or that they have something more important than reading about your potential solution. That means that your potential solution is not addressing a big pain or a big issue that they have. So that little test is evidence. So that's a very cheap evidence, okay? It's not proof that your idea is going to work, but it is already a little bit of proof that you're probably working on something that isn't important enough for those people to investigate more. So you need to do many of those kind of tests even before you start building stuff. In particular in industries, where you have capital expenditures, you can actually test things like that before you start spending money. That's all evidence that's going to tell you, should I throw away my first idea and take a new path and then go test that again? Here's the hard thing. It's not linear. It's iterative. You will advance, and then you'll see, oh, no, this doesn't work. You're going to regress, okay? And regression is never well seen in an established company. You'll be fired. But advancing, regressing, that's exactly how innovation happens. There is no such thing as a linear path to something, disruptive and new. And the biggest growth engines, the biggest, businesses are these kind of disruptive things that we have to explore. You can't just write a business plan. It's not going to happen that way.
Sure. So does the business model canvas essentially allow you to crash test or test drive or, really simulate your thesis, your hypothesis, your plan, and determine where you need to make the course corrections to achieve desired result?
So absolutely, and there are two phases that you want to distinguish. So let's say you have your idea here, and you want to go over here. Let's say if we're in a large company, we want to go from idea to at least a $500 million business or a $1 billion business, right? Traditionally, we'd write a business plan. It's that linear path. We all know that that's not the truth, that it's kind of like this, right? So what do you want to do to get from here to here? You want to start sketching out some potential paths, different business models. right? One could be selling a product. One could be licensing a product. One could be creating a subscription model. You're kind of designing your ideas. And here already, before even testing it with the market, you can crash test the design. I'll give you an example.
I like that.
My favorite example, I'm an espresso lover. I use this a lot because we can learn a lot from it, is the Nespresso example. So you might know espresso coffee machines with Nespresso pods. You put the pod in the machine and out comes a great coffee. Now, why is that example spectacular? Because number one, the first business model they started with didn't really work. And if you take that industry, it's a transactional industry of selling. Selling is not as good as having a lock-in effect with a consumable that you have to come back and get from them. Okay, so there, the business model design is spectacularly different. The business model of selling produces some profit. A business model where you lock in customers and you have consumables makes 20, 30, 40 times more profit. So even the design of the business model is different. But think of it for a medical device. You could sell a medical device. That might be a $2 million business. Or you can create a medical device with a consumable, a better business model design, and all of a sudden you have a $20 million profit. Okay? So already the design you can crash test. Now, after you've crash tested your design, that's when you get into customer development, Steve Blank, Eric Ries mode, where you test those ideas in the market. So, oh, I have this great design. Now I'm going to immediately test it with potential customers. And I'm going to see, oh, this didn't work. Okay, back to square one. But at least we didn't, invest time and energy in refining an idea that we have no idea if it's going to work. So you have these two phases, design and search. And you're going to go back and forth between designing your ideas, a business model, value propositions, then search, you're going to test it in the market, then you're going to see that it doesn't work, you're back to design. And then once you get more and more evidence that, okay, now I'm on the right path, then you switch to execution mode and you're going to scale your idea. Okay, that's when you invest the big bucks. So this phase, this crash test phase, is exactly the one that we're not doing yet in large companies. Startups have adopted it much faster. VCs, venture capitalists, are adopting it as well. So many VCs today, they tell you, okay, show me a business model canvas and show me the evidence you have that the elements in your business model canvas are going to work. So again, you need both. You need the business model canvas as the tool that's shaping your idea. And you need customer development and lean startup principles that prove that your idea is going to work. That's a very different way of doing things. And what we believe at our company is that we can support this process with computer-aided design for strategists and innovators. Imagine if we could work more like architects and engineers and support that messy phase with software. And I'm not trying to sell the tools we have. Somebody's going to do it.
That's awesome.
If we don't succeed with that computer-aided design, somebody else is going to do it. Maybe guys in Silicon Valley are faster than us guys in Switzerland, but somebody's going to do it. At one point, strategists and innovators are going to have computer-based tools that are going to support them, just like architects have tools. You still need the brilliance of an architect, the creativity of an architect to make a great building. Okay, it's not the software that's going to give you a great building. But you leverage. Okay, Frank Gehry, make a Frank Gehry building without computer-aided design, and you're never going to go in that building. It's going to collapse on you.
Michael, I'm amazed as I'm listening to Alex that a tool doesn't exist already.
Yeah, it is. Well, the business model canvas is so simple.
Well, you say it's simple, but I mean
on the surface.
Well,
right?
I mean, maybe Alex can validate. I mean, whether it's product managers that are building the product requirement document and go to market, or the executive sponsor and all these various stakeholders that bring a product solution to market, how well versed are they in terms of the 9 building blocks that you define the business model around? And even if they are, to go through this iterative process, how could you do it without a tool?
Well,
I don't understand how you could do it without a tool.
It's an interesting point, because Alex, a lot of the people who come on CXO-Talk are innovators and trying to drive business transformation of one type or another in very often their large company. And today, a lot of it has to do with digital transformation, and these companies are having a hard time. So maybe can you speak a little bit more about business model change inside large organizations, but relatively short, because we want to talk about value propositions, which is intimately connected, and where we could continue this conversation for hours, but we have about another 15 minutes, so we don't want to run out of time.
Yeah, so let me connect that back with the question before. So why don't these tools exist yet? Well, because we're not taught these tools at business school. So in large companies, people look at the education we have at business school. It's, well, we get great education around finance. We get great education around marketing. We get pretty good education around accounting. Those are the operational things. So there we have tools. The problem is now we're getting into a higher level of abstraction. What is a business model? So until recently, rethinking your business model was not as important because business models didn't expire as quickly, right? It's only recently that these business models expire much faster, like with Nokia and so on. And until recently, kind of the big success cases were ad hoc, without tools. So what these tools actually bring to the table is leverage a process that we were already doing, but in a better way. And I often ask, the first time because the tool is simple to start with, the business model canvas. You can use it in complex ways, but the first time I talked in front of senior executives, I thought they were going to throw me out of the room, that they should know their business model. And actually the contrary happened. They say, wow, I can map this on one page, right? And it's more important today to change your business model than just to change the product, to compete on products. That's why this is becoming kind of more important, right? Now, this is something that has taken off in recent years because more people are struggling with that fact that they should be inventing new business models and that the old ones are expiring. Again, I mean, the example of Kodak, I think, is pretty mind-boggling, right? It's not that they had a lack of innovation capabilities. Kodak helped invent the digital camera, right? They were not innovative. They were. But because they were incapable of innovating the business model at the same time, they almost dig their own grave. If you compare that to Fujifilm, there was just a huge kind of advertising advertorial in the Financial Times where Fujifilm was showing how they transformed. You have the picture of, here you have a company that went bankrupt because they were incapable of reinventing themselves. Here you have a company that is thriving, they're doing really well because they were able to reinvent themselves. They didn't use the business model canvas, so they succeeded. So I would ask those people, and I ask this successful entrepreneurs a lot, you succeeded. You didn't have any tools. Why are you still interested in the business model canvas and customer development, right? They did it without, because until now we didn't have these tools. Well, all of them say the same thing. They say, it took me a lot of failure, it was very painful, and I could have done this in a much more efficient way. So the number of times we hear, man, why didn't you come up with these tools 20 years ago when I built my company? And that's because we're not, people are not doing something differently in the sense that it's the same task, but now, number one, the task is more important. You need to reinvent yourselves more urgently because business models expire. Number two, now we have the tools, and we don't need to accept these big failures anymore. You probably know Better Place, right? The
Sure.
startup around electric vehicles that went through $850 million. Is that because these guys were stupid? Absolutely not. I mean, Shai Agassi at the head of this company is probably one of the most experienced business leaders in the world. He was at SAP. He was going to become the CEO, but CEOs are execution officers. They're not the best equipped to create. to build new businesses, in particular if they apply the logic of executing an existing business model to new ideas. So what Better Place didn't do, and we're seeing the same phenomenon in most large companies today, so I'm connecting long-windedly back to your question, is that chief execution officers apply the principles of execution to the search of new business models. They want business plans. They want predictions rather than experiments, okay? So that doesn't work. That's why Better Place went out of business, because they didn't test their value propositions. They didn't test their business model. They had a great business plan. They sold that business plan to investors, and then they started executing. Inventing the future is not execution, it's search. So what we need to create, I'll be a bit provocative here, this is an idea that comes out of conversations with Steve Wank. Today in large companies, besides the chief execution officer, at the same level, just under the board, we need a second job title at exactly the same level. And that's the chief corporate entrepreneur. The chief corporate entrepreneur invents the future of the company. The chief executive, we'll call it the chief execution officer, runs the existing business. Now you can imagine why this is not happening today, because imagine that. This needs to be a partnership. This person here is building the future. This person here is financing the future. They need to get along. This person can't build the future without the funds from the execution machine. Today, why don't we don't have this? Because these guys here say these are innovation pirates. No, it should be a partnership. See what I mean? So the chief corporate entrepreneur, I think, is the title that we need to create. So I hope board members of large companies like HP, like Dell, what they need to insist on is to create the chief corporate entrepreneur who's at the same level as the chief execution officer. We'll provocatively call it like that. And that's where I think large companies need to change.
Other exceptions to that, like Mark Benioff of Salesforce or other?
I can't talk that much about Salesforce. It's a company I admire, but I don't follow them that much. But again, I mean, sorry to come back to, you know, Apple and Amazon were examples of continuous business model innovators. So everybody thinks of Apple as the product innovation company. What they don't realize is, at least under Steve Jobs, to the late Steve Jobs, they were continuously reinventing the business model. When they introduced, or when Steve Jobs introduced the iPod, he actually started locking us in. That's a business model innovation because he created switching costs. It became hard for us to change our MP3 players because we were locked in. That was the basis of a continuous business model innovation. When they launched the iPad, they disrupted their laptop business deliberately. When they launched the iPhone, they knew they were killing the iPod. That is proactive reinvention. Most companies I see today, they don't proactively reinvent themselves. They wait for a crisis. And when a crisis comes, it's usually too late. Okay, Kodak, Nokia, it's too late, right? So it's not when am I going to start business model innovation, it's where is business model innovation happening in my company today. The second example I mentioned, Amazon, the number of business models they're running today is spectacular. Now you could say, oh, they're not very focused. This is not true, because if you look at if you analyze e-commerce, you analyze their infrastructure business, and you analyze their Amazon Web Services, they all rely on the same backstage. So it's an incredibly smart strategy that they are diversifying in higher margin businesses while building on the business models that they are already running, which are financially actually less interesting. Amazon Web Services has much higher margins than their e-commerce business, but one is built on the other. So those are great examples, and it's not a surprise that those are entrepreneurs. Remember the concept of the chief corporate entrepreneur? Right. Not surprising that companies run by entrepreneurs are able to reinvent themselves. But it's not enough. If you take Dell, they had a great business model, but they couldn't reinvent themselves. So it's not enough. There are a lot of factors. It's a hard thing to do.
So we have just like 5 minutes left, and let's let's talk about value propositions. You're coming out with a new book called Value Proposition Design. Why did you write that book? What's the connection to business models? And speak really fast so we can compress, half an hour down into 5 minutes.
We need to schedule 2 hours with Alex.
Next time you'll come back and we'll go into more depth. So value
propositions. The Swiss are very slow. The Swiss are very.
No, you're awesome. That's why I want another 45 minutes so I can learn from you. But go ahead.
So, again, let me use the analogy of the surgeon that we started out on. The surgeon doesn't have one tool to perform every kind of surgery, right? And even for one heart surgery, a surgeon is going to use several tools. Some more than others, but we need a series of tools. And the same, in business success. Some people say, yeah, but you want to add this block and that block to the business model canvas, and then you end up with a Swiss Army knife, a tool that doesn't do any job well, right? It does a lot of jobs, but not well. So, no, the business model canvas allows you to describe how you're creating value for your company, right? How you're going to make money, right? The blueprint of your strategy. Don't use that to describe how you're creating value for your customer. So we created another tool with, for a kind of an issue that is a bit closer to what people do today, less disruptive, but nevertheless powerful tool. We live in a product-based world still. People are not yet very focused on business models. They're more focused on creating great value propositions around products. But there is I think, no good tool out there that allows you in a very concrete way, tangible way to visualize how are your products and services creating value for your customers. And if you go into most companies, they have a lot of great product ideas, they have a lot of great feature ideas, but ask them, get them to articulate how concretely are they creating value for their customers. Even many product managers, today I was speaking at a product management conference, product managers can't always articulate it really well. Okay? So we created a tool that allows you to zoom into the business model canvas into two boxes, the value proposition and the customer segment you're targeting. And we created a map for those two boxes. So literally, think of it like zooming in to a lower level of granularity. Now you have a map to describe how your products and services are creating value for your customers. So we came up with a simple concept to sketch out your customer. What jobs are they trying to get done? What are their pains? What are their gains? It's, again, a map. And with that map, you can do better what people are already doing. You can make your customer research more actionable. You ask yourself, what are your customers trying to get done? What's painful for them? What are the obstacles that are holding them back from doing this stuff well that they want to do? What kind of gains are they expecting? How do they measure success? Once you understand that picture really well, now you can say, okay, here are my products and services. Now I can connect it back to the customer profile and say, this is how I'm relieving pains. So you're going to connect your products and services to the jobs, pains, and gains you mapped out here. This is how I'm creating gains for your customers. So all you're doing now is you're making explicit how you're creating value for your customers. So again, it's this idea of visualizing, of mapping. Why is this important? Because today we don't have a very good way in most companies to explicitly articulate how we're creating value for our customers. What does that mean? It means that product teams and marketing teams and finance teams don't understand each other because we don't have a shared language. When we make the marketing communications, well, if I made explicit on what pain relievers and gain creators I'm focusing on, the whole company knows this is what we're doing. We're not working on all of the customers' jobs, pains, and gains. No, we made a design choice. This is what we're doing. This is what we're not doing. And again, you're making things explicit. And I think, I like making this analogy back to information technology. A team that's going to sketch out, server infrastructure, database infrastructure, would never work without visual tools because it's too complex. You need to make these things explicit so everybody, works into the same direction. We understand the architecture. We know what we're going to do. Why don't we do the same thing in business? Why don't we have visual tools that allow us all to work in the same direction, just like we do, in the more operational things, like in database design, right? I think we're going to get there again. So the reason why we came up with value proposition design, the new book, is because we believe in this fuzzy space of value propositions. What does this even mean, right? We wanted to create a shared language and a tool that allows you to manipulate value propositions as if it was a concrete object. So we created an object to manipulate in the business model space. Now we created one over here. I think we'll have many of these tools. Maybe we will write another book. Hopefully other people will do it for other issues that you need for success. Organizational culture, I mentioned a couple of times. How fuzzy is that issue? I believe we can have tools to turn organizational culture into something tangible that we can manipulate. Seems a little bit abstract, right? But it just means that we're going to make all these strategic things more tangible so we can really work with them, and it doesn't become this, it doesn't stay this kind of fuzzy thing. We can do computer-aided design. So, this is what an innovator thinks. It's almost crazy if you want, the crazy inventor. But somebody's going to do it, and I think in 5 to 10 years, this is the new normal. This is the profession of the strategist and innovator. It's going to be completely normal to use these kind of tools.
Great, wow.
And Alex, is this tool, where does it sit? Is it in a CRM solution that has social technologies that allow the stakeholders to collaborate? Is it a standalone tool or maybe integrated in your email? I mean, where do you, where does this capability sit in the enterprise?
It's going to be, and again, I mean, sometimes, when we tend to adopt a Silicon Valley spirit, even in a Swiss company, we say, we're going to become the SAP of strategy, right? So it becomes an operational tool that everybody is going to use because we want to understand what's the value proposition, it's built on top of which business model, who's responsible for all of these things in the business model. So it's going to be a very social tool that everybody can link into. And today, I think everybody in a company is responsible for the business model and for the value propositions. A product manager over here can't build a great product if they don't understand the business model over here, because all of the pieces are connected. So anybody in the company is going to have to understand what's the strategy, what are the value propositions, what are the business models, and contribute to that. So we all work into the same direction. So yes, it's a very social system. It's an enterprise system, just like we have enterprise resource planning on the operational level. I think we're going to have something like, strategic resource planning for the more strategic level. And it's going to be normal and indispensable. So I think those kind of tools are going to replace the broken strategic planning process. Ask anybody tomorrow, what do you think about strategic planning? Is it broken? You won't hear one person who says strategic planning is still creating value today, yet we do it again and again. Imagine if that was a living, active tool where you don't just present once a quarter or once a year, but everybody knows how the strategy is evolving. Everybody knows where are the improvement projects contributing to the business model. Everybody knows what are the new business models that we're exploring. So that's kind of the vision towards which we're working.
That's awesome.
And I think everybody's going to be involved in this.
Well, I asked that question because you see key activities and key resources as 2 out of the 9 building blocks.
Yes.
And any business model will require activities across lines of business and stakeholders with various skill set and disciplines. So it would have to be a living social entity for everyone to be on the same page, the same canvas.
And if it's not, you're just talking to yourself.
Yeah, and how you measure success and where you are. I love the fact of the potential reporting that can come from this system that allows all of us to have not this, Michael, you've written thousands of blogs about IT failures because you have various stakeholders in various lines of business, and they all have a different picture of how well a project is doing. And to be able to just have that visibility would be incredible. Again, I go back to I can't believe it doesn't exist.
Well, we're going to have to ask you to come back so we can talk about, there's so much more that we could discuss, but our time is up.
And I apologize that we didn't ask you any of the questions that we thought we were going to ask you.
Yeah, we sent you all of these questions, but next time we'll ask you the questions that we sent you in advance. Actually, if we said that, we would lie. We won't.
It was a real pleasure. I get excited about this stuff, so I go on talking. But I think this is a big topic for the companies. If we want, if the large companies, if they want to survive, they're going to have to drastically change, and we're going to see a big wave of management innovation that today, you know, a lot of large companies are going to disappear because they're going to be disrupted. But those disruptors are also going to be disrupted if they don't start understanding that, you know, like Amazon, pretty amazing, right? There are a lot of things that are not right about Amazon, but what they are doing well is the continuous reinvention. And I think that's going to be the new normal. Steve Blank likes to say, well, maybe we're in the age of the disposable company. They execute one business model well, and then they disappear, right? So we're going to have these two classes of companies. The disposable one, going to get big, and they're going to disappear. A little bit like the hits in music, right? One-time hit, there you go. And then you have some very few that can reinvent themselves.
All right. Well, on that, we have to thank Alex Osterwalder, who is the real expert on business models and has written one book, the definitive book on business models with the Business Model Canvas, and is now working on a book related to value propositions. This has been show number 78. What's that?
It's coming out. Let me be a little bit un-Swiss and do a sales pitch here. It's coming out on October 20th. So you can actually pre-order it. You can get 100 pages for free online. Just Google value proposition design. Go to Strategizer. You get a third of the book. It's a freemium model. You've got to innovate the business model. You get a lot of it for free. So have a look and you know, decide on your own if these tools are valuable for your organization.
Everyone in my marketing group will get the book, Alex. I really look forward to it. Thank you very much.
So coming out on October 20th, Google Value Proposition Design, and take a look. Vala, as always, it's a pleasure.
Unbelievable show, Michael. Thanks. Well done.
Alex Osterwalder, thank you so much, and we'd like to thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.